Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the best, and I mean the best of the best, recordings of Shostakovich's last symphony, number 15. Ooh, what a strange and cryptic work this is, and how much ink has been spilled while people speculate about what it means, because Shostakovich, of course, was a master at sticking hidden cryptic musical messages into his works, and this one has actual quotations, specifically from Rossini's William Tell Overture, and Wagner's Ring, and Tristan and Isolde. And everybody goes, oh, what could that mean? What could it possibly mean? I don't think it means anything. I'll tell you the truth. I think Shostakovich is just quoting because it perks your ears up in what's otherwise a very long, creepy symphony. And it's quite a bit of fun. Obviously, in the first movement, the William Tell Overture is a bit of humor in there, and the gallop from the end, it's delightfully funny because the opening is a very funny, witty little toy shop allegretto with all kinds of funky, strange percussive noises and rhythmic hijinks. The second movement is a very dark, really dark, solemn adagio, with sort of a chorale thing in the middle of it, or in the beginning as well, and it's spooky and desolate and bleak, and it rises to an enormous climax, and it has the sound. The sound is the sound of death. Shostakovich was, in the hospital. He had cancer. He was a mess when he was writing a lot of this music, and if you want to hear death staring you in the face, the sound of your heart going, that's this noise. It's pretty graphic, isn't it? I had a heart attack. Trust me, that's exactly what it sounded like. That's what you hear while you're having a heart attack. That just nasty, grinding dissonance. But it's not. It's painful, but it's not loud. There's an emptiness to it. It's really a fascinating sound he derived there. Then you get the scherzo, which is linked to the adagio, and the linking thing is Shostakovich's own nickname, the DSCH motive. Da, 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 da. That's, his initials, spelled out in German, which corresponds to letters. And then those letters correspond to notes. It's a little bit removed. And, it's not the most direct thing, but yeah, it was his motive. Those four notes, and that's how you join the adagio to the scherzo. And here is the DSCH motive that gets the job done. You will note these are very short snippets. This is a symphony that's unified, generally speaking, by very, very short but extremely noticeable motives. That's one of the reasons Shostakovich uses these quotations, because they're so instantly recognizable, but also very brief. And then he gets to move on with his own thing. Now, the finale begins with the Fate motive from Wagner's Ring. If you know Siegfried's Funeral March, that's how it starts, basically. And that runs into the prelude, the first three notes of the prelude anyway, to Tristan and Isolde. And again, why mix those two things together? Who knows? It works perfectly well whether you know what they are or if you don't know what they are. And then comes the marvelous thing, one of Shostakovich's most beautiful melodies. It is one of the most heartbreaking melodies. It's so delicate. It has this fragile, wistful, lonely beauty. It's really, really special. And I'm going to play it for you. You may note I do not have the Petrenko recordings for this symphony because his 15th is not, in my view, one of the great 15ths. It's very good. Don't get me wrong, it's fine. But I don't think it's one of the great performances. I chose instead Maxim Shostakovich on Superfun because Maxim Shostakovich conducted the premiere and he recorded the symphony first for Melodia. And I don't think that that's ever been on CD. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. But he redid the whole cycle quite well with the Prague Symphony Orchestra. And so, and since Superfun is nice to us and lets me use samples, I'm going to play the Superfun sample of the gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous melody, in the heartbreaking melody at the beginning of the finale. Here it is. That's such an unforgettable passage. But it's not the only thing that matters, because that melody leads to a big central passacaglia. Now, a passacaglia, in case you don't know, is just a series of variations over a repeating bass line. And the bass line is dum bum ba da da, dum bum ba bum bum, da 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 dum, da 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 dum. And that's basically what it is. And it repeats itself a bunch of times. It rises to this absolutely hair-raising climax that blows itself up into nothing, to smithereens. And then the beautiful tune comes back, and the whole symphony disintegrates, leaving nothing but it's in A major, by the way. It's a major key symphony, a happy symphony, supposedly. Not. And, a long-held note on the violins, under which the percussion ticks away with this fabulous tick-tock, tick-tock. In fact, I'll play you that. It appears more than once in the symphony. Originally, it's the end of the scherzo, but then it becomes the end of the whole symphony in a very long coda that alternates between the tick-tock, and repetitions of the passacaglia theme on the timpani, and it's just wonderful, especially if you like percussion. So here is the tick-tock thing from the end of the scherzo. And that's the end of the symphony. It ends with this long, long, long chord with a final little smile, ting, on the triangle that completes the major chord. And the symphony just fades away into nothingness. Now, that tick-tock thing is very well known to Shostakovitchians, because it originated in the Fourth Symphony and then became the ending of the Second Cello Concerto. And then, as I said, it reappears twice in the 15th Symphony. So what are the best performances? Well, here's the deal. There are essentially two ways of doing the 15th. You can make it very, very slow and very sort of dour and gloomy and death-obsessed. Or you can take a more flowing tempo and emphasize some of the gawky, funny, more, ironic aspects of it. Or you can try and do something in between. And that's where we are with these performances. Now, I've chosen 7 to discuss because, quite frankly, these are the best, the 7 best, I think. I really believe. And all the others, there are many good ones. It's like most of these things, but they're not as memorable, I think, as these are for what they bring to the music. So I began, like I said, talking about Maxim Shostakovich on Supraphon, because it is, he did the premiere. And although the Melodia recording isn't around, you get a very good sense of how he did it, which we presume might have been how Shostakovich wanted it. At least that's the theory. And it's a wonderful performance. The orchestra is still quite Eastern sounding. It has, watery horns and very characterful woodwinds and sort of thin and wiry strings. And it's a wonderful, wonderful Shostakovich sound, to be honest with you. And I really like the way Shostakovich, the son, paces this piece. The work never drags. It's consistently interesting. It leads the ear on, and I think it's just a really great performance. So that's one thing to consider. Another one that is similar, because after all, he was there, is Barshai's. This is a similar one to Maxim Shostakovich. It has more refined orchestral playing because it was WDR Symphony Orchestra from Cologne, and it has really explosive, vicious climaxes that are marvelous. And I think that if you find, Maxim Shostakovich just a little too raw, then this will do you, because it really does build as it goes quite successfully. It's excellent. So Barshai on Brilliant Classics, very inexpensive, definitely worth considering. Yes. And of course we must include Eugene Normandy. This was the first ever recording of the symphony outside of the Soviet Union. And it was marvelous. It is marvelous. It's a performance also in the more flowing mode. It's fantastically well played. It was quite well recorded as well. And I just think it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Normandy really catches the first movement very, very well, too. You wouldn't think sometimes, a little the gawkiness and all that, but he doesn't smooth it over or anything. He really lets it happen the way it's supposed to. And I think that you really should hear this as well. It's held up extremely well over the years. It was recorded, in 74 or something like that. It was right after the symphony was composed. So let's see, 1960 something, and the rest of it was, I can't even read it, 72. There we go. I mean, it was brand new and wonderful, wonderful. So after Normandy, well, yes, Wigglesworth. Now, Wigglesworth is one of the slower, more intense, darker ones. And you really need to crank up the volume on this recording because it has this huge dynamic range, like a lot of BIS recordings do. And if you do, it's quite an experience because the climaxes will blow you through the back of the room, and the soft parts you may have to strain to hear. But it's a very, very intense, beautifully realized conception of the work at somewhat slower tempi. So that's really cool. Also really cool, high tink. This was one of the ones where he sort of gave it the high tink treatment. The high tink treatment, first of all, is humorless because he had no sense of humor whatsoever, and very serious, very, very serious. Again, tempos tend to be on the slower side. The first movement is not funny, it's bitter. It's everything is measured out in a way, but it's extremely intense and very focused. And the finale, the ending, is really extraordinary sounding. He really stretches it out, and it's very hypnotic. This is always a very, very highly regarded performance, and rightly so. So that's worth considering. And let's see, we've got two more here in our 7, right? Was it 7? Yeah, 7. Nimi Yarvey. Now, Yarvey's is a wonderful sort of mixed version because he really gets the humor of the first movement in the scherzo, and he brings it out with a lot of pep and a lot of rhythmic sharpness and edge. But boy, the finale is hair-raising, really hair-raising. It's marvelously well done. Really an extraordinary performance, really one of the best things he ever did in Shostakovich, and certainly the best of his Deutsche Grammophon Shostakovich recordings, I think. This is that mixed cycle that has bits by everybody in the world. It's got Bernstein, Shog, Yarvey, Karajan, Previn, Rostropovich. And finally, they managed to put it all together because otherwise Deutsche Grammophon doesn't have a Shostakovich cycle. So, yeah, definitely consider Yarvey with Gothenburg. It's extremely fine, and you might be able to still find it. Originally, there was a 2 CD set of 13, 14, 15, and they're all very good. But 15 is really the outstanding performance. However, the best one, the pièce de résistance, the absolute icing on top of the eclair, is Courtl Xanderling. Oh, this is really, I mean, if you want slow, intense, serious, ironic, yes, because even at these tempi, he really lets the first movement in scherzo, unfold the way they're supposed to. But the finale is just going to knock you dead. It really will. He did this twice. There was another later one he did for Errata with the Cleveland Orchestra that's just too slow. It was actually coupled with a not very good Mahler ninth as well. It's just too slow. I mean, the Cleveland one. This one is very slow, but it's not so slow that the whole thing just dies. Because you can stretch this out to the point where, it's supposed to suggest eternity, not be eternity. You know what I mean? It's not supposed to feel like an eternity when you're doing it. But this Berlin Classics recording with Courtl Xanderling and the Berlin Symphony Orchestra is really special. And anyone who loves this symphony will tell you so. Trust me when I say that, because it's sort of a legendary Shostakovich 15. And those are my top 7, any one of which you'll be happy with. I mean, you'll be happy with a lot of other ones. I mean, Rostropovich is very good. Petrenko is very good. There are plenty of good ones. Maris Jansen's is very good. You could find a bunch of them, usually in complete cycles, because it's not the kind of symphony that sort of lends itself to separate treatment. But even so, I would stick with these, or at least listen to a couple of them, get a sense of the piece, and then go off and have a good time. I really do think this is a masterpiece. It's a wonderful symphony. An absolutely wonderful symphony, all the more so because it's Shostakovich returning to purely instrumental music after the vocal 13th and 14th, and he was very ill and sort of towards the end of his life, but there's something that's just quintessentially him in this piece. It really, he seems to have nothing to hide anymore. He's just, and however cryptic those quotations may be, or the other references may be, the tick-tock and the death and the thing, and it's really echt Shostakovich. He's not afraid of bearing his soul, and a lot of that soul involved desolation, emptiness, fear. I mean, sorry, but that's the way it was. Great piece of music. Absolutely great piece of music. So keep on listening, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.